Most people see the workplace as a simple place to earn a living, complete daily tasks, and go home safely. But every so often, a regular day at work turns into a scene of unimaginable horror. Behind the buzz of machinery, the clicking of keyboards, and the routines everyone follows, tragedies occur that leave a lasting mark on those who witness them. In this video, we'll explore 5 of the most disturbing workplace deaths ever recorded. True stories of lives tragically cut short in shocking and unforgettable ways. It was October 29, 2013, in Ulkensplat, Netherlands, a day that began like any other for 2 young technicians, 19-year-old Don Koos and 21-year-old Arjan Cortes. They arrived at the Piet Dewit wind farm, ready for what should have been a routine maintenance job on a 260-foot Vestas V66 wind turbine. Alongside 2 experienced colleagues, they climbed into the narrow metal tower, surrounded by ladders, wires, and equipment. 5 ladder sections, each nearly 80 feet high, stood between them and the turbine's top. From there, the NL, the box-shaped hub containing the turbine's moving parts, awaited. The wind howled outside, the day bright and deceptively calm, and yet danger was lurking where no one expected it. Wind turbines are symbols of clean energy, icons of progress, and seemingly safe. Accidents were rare, almost unheard of, until that day. As the men ascended, ropes and harnesses offered a false sense of security. Then, without warning, the unthinkable happened. Inside the NL, a sudden electrical fault sparked an arc flash, a blinding explosion of heat and light that ignited a fire almost instantly. The flames spread with terrifying speed, engulfing the space where Don and Arjan stood. The 2 older technicians managed to escape, climbing through the fire, hearts racing, as smoke and heat seared the air. But Don and Arjan were trapped. The fire had cut off their only path down, leaving them stranded nearly 80 meters above the ground. Panic, fear, and the impossible choice of survival closed in. Stay and face the fire, or leap into the unknown. In those final, unbearable moments, they clung to each other, a bond forged in sheer terror. A local resident captured that haunting embrace in a photograph, a frozen testament to fear, courage, and tragedy. Arjan made the leap, plummeting toward the base where emergency responders rushed to him. Don remained behind, swallowed by the fire, unreachable despite the frantic efforts of firefighters. Their hoses could barely reach halfway up, and by the time a crane arrived, it was already too late. The other 2 technicians survived, but the world would never forget the image of Dan and Arjan, trapped in their final moments together. Investigators traced the fire to a short circuit, yet no one was held accountable. The tragedy exposed glaring gaps in safety protocols, outdated turbines still in use, emergency plans that couldn't save lives at that height, and firefighting tools that couldn't reach. The danger wasn't theoretical, it was real, and it wasn't confined to workers alone. Tall turbines obstructed helicopters in wildfire-prone areas, while similar incidents in other countries underscored a dangerous pattern. Even a decade later, the risk remains. Another Vestas turbine caught fire in Iowa in 2023, a chilling reminder that nothing had truly changed. But the image of Don and Arjan, locked together above the flames, continues to resonate. It's a stark, unforgettable warning. No technology is worth a life, and safety cannot be optional. Their story lingers in the mind, a pulse of fear and sorrow that reminds us all how fragile human life can be when faced with the unimaginable. It was October 30th, 2021, at the La Jolla Zip Zoom zipline on the La Jolla Indian Reservation in Palma Valley, California. The sun was beginning to dip behind the ridges, casting long shadows across the valley where thousands of visitors had come before, chasing the thrill of flying 100 feet above the ground. For 34-year-old Wen Romero, it was just another shift, another day ensuring the safety of customers who trusted him with their lives. But in a matter of seconds, routine turned into tragedy. That evening, Romero was assisting a woman on the launch platform, double-checking her harness as she prepared to take off. It was a task he'd done countless times, but as she started to move, something went wrong. She slipped out of position, her body tilting dangerously. Without hesitation, Romero grabbed her harness, steadying her before she could fall, but in saving her balance, he lost his own. Both were suddenly dangling over the valley, suspended nearly 100 feet in the air. The zipline stretched for more than half a mile, capable of carrying riders at speeds over 50 miles per hour. But for Romero, there was no thrill in this moment, only a terrifying realization. The line was never meant to hold two people like this. Their combined weight could strain the cable. Something had to give. And so, in one split-second decision, Romero did the unthinkable. He let go. The woman remained safely secured, her life spared. But Romero plummeted nearly 70 feet to the ground below. When emergency crews from CAL FIRE reached him, he was still alive, battered and broken. They worked desperately, rigging ropes and lifting him out before airlifting him to Sharp Memorial Hospital. Doctors fought for 2 days to save him, but on November 1st, 2021, Romero's injuries claimed his life. The woman he saved walked away unharmed, alive because of his sacrifice. In the days that followed, tributes poured in. To those who knew him, Romero wasn't just a worker, he was a father, a friend, and now, a hero. A GoFundMe was launched to support his child, and donations flooded in, surpassing expectations. People who had never met him grieved because the story of his sacrifice was impossible to ignore. But beneath the grief lay something darker, anger. Because Romero's death wasn't only about bravery, it was about failure. Investigators found that the zipline lacked the very safeguards that could have saved him. No safety nets, no guardrails, no proper fall arrest systems. Employees, including Romero, had not been adequately trained to handle fall hazards. OSHA issued citations for 4 serious violations, with potential fines reaching $225,000. But the fines were nothing compared to what was lost. Since 2015, the La Jolla Zip Zoom had attracted countless thrill seekers. But unlike major amusement parks, zip lines on tribal land often fall into regulatory gray areas, with fewer rules and less oversight. That loophole left workers like Romero vulnerable, and in his case, it cost him everything. His story lingers because it forces us to ask the hardest questions. Could his death have been avoided if the proper safety systems had been in place? If management had taken training and fall risks more seriously, would he still be alive today? The answers won't change what happened, but they reveal the truth. This wasn't just an accident. It was a tragedy born from preventable gaps in safety. Yet when people remember Romero, they won't only remember the failures that cost him his life. They'll remember the moment he let go. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. He gave everything to protect someone else. His sacrifice will never be forgotten, even as the zip line remains closed and the investigation continues.
We have continuing coverage this morning of that deadly explosion in Oakwood Village. The blast happened yesterday afternoon at the I. Schumann & Company metal plant. One man was killed in the explosion and another 13 people injured. Witnesses say the explosion could be felt.
It was February 20th, 2023, just after 2:15 p.m., when Bedford, Ohio was rocked by an explosion so powerful it could be heard miles away. Inside the I. Schumann & Company metal manufacturing plant on Alexander Road, workers were going about another ordinary shift until the world around them erupted into chaos. The blast came suddenly. The first explosion was small, a warning no one understood, but the second tore through the plant with devastating force. Windows shattered in nearby businesses, cars and parking lots were crushed by falling debris, and a thick column of smoke twisted into the sky, carrying with it the sound of fire alarms, screaming, and pure panic. Among the 14 workers inside was Steve Mullins, a 46-year-old maintenance worker who had given nearly 3 decades of his life to that factory. He had started right out of high school, building a career brick by brick, day by day. He was the kind of man people trusted, the kind of worker who showed up no matter what. But on that day, his loyalty to the plant would cost him everything. When the furnace erupted, molten metal rained down like fire from the heavens. Flames consumed the building in minutes, walls crumbled, and parts of the facility collapsed around the terrified workers. Those who could stumbled out in shock, faces covered in ash, clothes burned, skin blistered. Some barely able to walk, others too stunned to speak. Witnesses from nearby businesses described the explosion as deafening, a sound that stayed in their bones long after the smoke began to clear. Steve was pulled from the wreckage, his body covered in severe burns. Emergency crews rushed him to the hospital, fighting to keep him alive, but despite their efforts, he didn't make it. After nearly 30 years of dedication, his life ended in a moment of fire and steel. His death wasn't just a number in a report. It was a devastating loss for his family, his friends, and his co-workers who had stood beside him for decades. Investigators quickly suspected the cause. Water had leaked onto molten metal inside one of the furnaces, creating a catastrophic steam blast. But what made it worse, what made it unforgivable, was the fact that this plant had been warned before. In 2019, OSHA inspectors found serious safety violations, workers exposed to molten metal without proper gear, unsafe conditions that should have been corrected long ago. One worker had already suffered severe burns back then, but the changes weren't made, at least not the way they should have been. Now, after the tragedy, lawsuits have been filed. The injured workers and the families of those lost argue that negligence and broken safety protocols paved the way for disaster. And for many in Bedford, the questions linger heavily. Could this have been prevented? Would Steve Mullen still be alive today if the warnings had been taken seriously? The company has since shut down operations at the plant, promising to support employees and cooperate with investigators. But promises and condolences don't erase the trauma of that day. They don't bring back a man who had spent most of his life inside those walls, trusting that the place where he gave his time, sweat, and years would keep him safe.
You're my son, my baby boy, and I'll try my best to be strong.
It was January 8, 2013, in Bury, Greater Manchester, England, a day that began like any other for 16-year-old Cameron Menshaw. Fresh out of school, he had just started his first job, a government-funded apprenticeship at Huntley Mount Engineering Limited, a small metalwork factory tucked away in an industrial area. Cameron was proud and hopeful, filled with the kind of quiet ambition that drives teenagers forward. He dreamed of becoming an engineer, of learning skills that would one day allow him to support his family and carve out a life of independence. As the eldest of 4 siblings, he carried a weight of responsibility, but also a determination that made his family proud. That morning, like so many others, he set off with optimism, unaware that the day would take a dark and irreversible turn. From the outside, the factory looked unremarkable, but inside, danger lurked in plain sight. The factory was run by 59-year-old Zafar Hussain and supervised by his son, 35-year-old Akbar Hussain. Machines whirred and clanged, cutting and polishing metal at high speeds. But beneath the hum of productivity lay a system that ignored safety. Protective guards had been removed from the machines to speed up production. Risk assessments were non-existent. Teenagers, fresh out of school and full of potential, were handed responsibility over machines capable of inflicting fatal injuries in seconds. Cameron was given oversized overalls, loose and ill-fitting, perfect for catching on moving machinery. Apprentices were told to polish spinning metal parts by hand using emery cloth, a rough material meant for sanding. They were shown only the briefest demonstration, expected to learn the rest from other inexperienced workers. Every action was a gamble. Every moment carried invisible danger. On that fateful morning, Cameron followed the instructions he had been given. He approached the lathe, a machine spinning metal at a terrifying 2,800 revolutions per minute. A simple misstep on his loose sleeve was enough. In a horrifying instant, Cameron was pulled into the machine, caught in the relentless, merciless motion of metal. His body was trapped, his head and upper body crushed. The sounds of machinery clashing, of frantic shouts, filled the factory. Emergency crews were called, firefighters rushed to free him, and he was airlifted to Withshaw Hospital, but the damage was already done. At 12:20 p.m., Cameron was pronounced dead. His mother, Joanne Hill, was left devastated, having driven him to work that very morning, never imagining it would be the last time she'd see her son alive. The investigation that followed revealed shocking negligence at every level. The factory's lack of safety protocols, combined with inadequate training and oversight, painted a grim picture of preventable tragedy. The court confirmed that Cameron's death could have been avoided had the company implemented even the most basic safety measures. Zafar Hussain was sentenced to 8 months in prison and banned from being a company director for 10 years. Akbar Hussain received a 4-month suspended sentence, a $3,000 fine, and was ordered to pay $15,000 in court costs. The company itself was fined $150,000 and faced additional costs of $15,000, while the recruitment agency that placed Cameron there, Lime People Training Solutions, was fined $75,000 and ordered to pay $25,000 in court costs. Judge David Stockdale described Cameron's death as the result of gross negligence, emphasizing that the young apprentice had been let down by those who should have protected him. He also praised Joanne Hill for her incredible strength and composure during the courtroom proceedings. But no amount of justice could undo the loss of Cameron's life. He was only 16, brimming with potential, dreams, and ambition. He had been taking his first steps into adulthood when a system designed to protect him failed utterly. It was May 18th, 2023, in the sweltering bush of Luanda National Park, deep in Malawi's Machinga district. 28-year-old Ivano Bandanda, a dedicated ranger with African Parks, arrived for duty like any other day. Known among his team as brave, hardworking, and dependable, Ivano had spent 4 years protecting the park's wildlife, navigating one of Africa's most dangerous environments. But that day, danger didn't wait for him to find it. It came charging from the shadows. Earlier that morning, park officials had received an urgent call from nearby villagers. A buffalo had escaped the park's boundaries near Massa Camp. This wasn't just an ordinary breach. Sections of the electric fence had been stolen, taken by locals to make illegal snares traps designed to kill wildlife. The consequences were immediate and deadly. A loose buffalo wasn't just a threat to the animals, it was a threat to humans. Strong, unpredictable, and stressed, these massive creatures could kill in moments. The Department of National Parks and Wildlife dispatched a licensed hunter, Alec Gunway, along with Ivano and another ranger to track and neutralize the animal. The 3 men ventured into thick brush, tall grasses, and near-zero visibility, moving cautiously, knowing that any step could provoke the buffalo. Then, without warning, it struck. The buffalo had been hiding, watching. It charged from the cover of the brush, fast and unstoppable. Gondwe fired, striking the animal, but it wasn't enough. The buffalo, wounded, thundered back into the bush. For a fleeting moment it seemed the worst had passed, but the reprieve was short-lived. A few minutes later, the buffalo circled, this time coming from behind. No one saw it coming. It lunged straight at Ivano. His colleagues froze, helpless, as the massive animal trampled him, leaving fatal injuries in its wake. Ivano died in the heart of the bush, doing the job he had trained for, the job he loved. News of his death rippled quickly through the park and the surrounding communities, confirmed by Brighton Kumchedua, Director of Parks and Wildlife. He explained that even after the first strike, the buffalo's speed and strength made it impossible to stop, leaving Ivano with no chance to survive. The tragedy didn't end there. Another buffalo had escaped the park, likely due to the same stolen fencing, underscoring the deadly consequences of human interference. African Parks released a statement acknowledging the perilous circumstances and emphasizing that Ivano's death was the direct result of stolen fence wires, a simple act with catastrophic consequences. They vowed to support his young wife and son through this unimaginable loss, both financially and emotionally, as the rangers and conservation teams continued to search the bush, helicopters slicing through the sky in pursuit of the still roaming buffalo. Ivano was only 28, a young father, and a man who chose to face danger every day most people never see. In the end, he gave his life protecting both people and animals, confronting a force of nature few could stand against. His story is a haunting reminder of the hidden dangers in the wild and the courage required to face them, a life cut short in the line of duty, yet remembered for bravery, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication.
Right now, investigators working to determine what went wrong, why a man cleaning windows at 100 Summer Street fell to his death.
On the morning of October 23, 2023, Nicholas J. Marks woke up expecting another ordinary workday high above the streets of Boston. At 40 years old, Nick had done this kind of work countless times before, suspended hundreds of feet in the air, trusting ropes, harnesses, and metal anchors with his life. Heights didn't intimidate him. But that Tuesday morning, something went terribly wrong. Nick lived in East Weymouth with his partner, Kristen, and their 2 young sons. He was a devoted father, the kind who worked a physically demanding job, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Window cleaning at extreme heights required focus, precision, and absolute trust in safety equipment. Friends and co-workers described Nick as experienced and careful, someone who didn't take shortcuts and understood that one mistake or one failure could be deadly. Outside of work, his life revolved around his family. Every paycheck mattered. Every day on the job was about keeping food on the table and stability in a household that depended on him. That morning, Nick reported to 100 Summer Street, a 32-story, 450-foot office tower in Boston's financial district. As the city below began to wake up, he prepared to clean the building's exterior. He climbed into his bosun's chair, clipped into what should have been multiple layers of protection, and positioned himself to begin. Everything appeared routine. Everything appeared safe. Then, in a matter of seconds, it wasn't. Surveillance footage later captured the horrifying moment. Without warning, the anchor line securing Nick's harness failed. Almost immediately, the secondary lifeline the backup meant to save him also gave way. In an instant, he was no longer suspended. He was falling. Nick slammed into the building's parapet wall with immense force, leaving visible damage to the structure itself, before continuing his plunge toward the ground below. There was no time to react. He fell from an extreme height, his safety gear and equipment ultimately found scattered at the scene. The accident happened just before 8 a.m. The area around the building was quickly cordoned off as emergency responders arrived. Boston Police and the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office launched an immediate investigation. For those who witnessed the aftermath, the scene was devastating, a stark reminder of how unforgiving high-rise work can be when something fails. As investigators dug deeper, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration found that Sky Safety, Inc., the Massachusetts-based company that employed Nick, had committed multiple safety violations. Not minor oversights, but serious and willful failures. OSHA cited the company for 2 willful violations, 4 serious violations, and 2 repeat violations, many tied directly to equipment maintenance and inadequate training. Even more troubling, Sky Safety had a history. Under its former name, High-Rise Incommerce, the company had been cited before, in 2013 and again in 2019, for incidents involving damaged ropes and insufficient protection of descent systems from sharp edges. The very hazards that should have been addressed years earlier appeared once again, with fatal consequences. OSHA officials emphasize that employers have a responsibility to ensure workers are properly trained to inspect fall protection equipment, and that rope descent systems are maintained with extreme care. When someone works hundreds of feet above the ground, there is no margin for error. One worn rope, one neglected inspection, one ignored warning, and a life can be lost. In the aftermath of Nick's death, his family was left shattered. Kristen suddenly found herself raising their 2 young boys alone, grappling not only with unimaginable grief, but with immediate financial uncertainty. OSHA later proposed fines totaling $447,000 against Sky Safety, a figure meant to underscore the seriousness of the violations. But for Nick's family, no penalty could undo what had happened. No fine could replace a father, a partner, a provider.
A zookeeper has died after being attacked by a tiger at South Lakes Wild Animal Park in the UK.
In May 2013, a place meant to showcase wonder and wildlife became the scene of an unthinkable tragedy. South Lakes Wild Animal Park in Dalton-in-Furness, Cumbria, was already awake for the day when a young zookeeper stepped into the tiger house, expecting nothing more than another routine shift doing the job she loved. By the end of that morning, Sarah McClay would lose her life, and the zoo world would be forced to confront how thin the line between control and catastrophe truly is. Sarah was just 24 years old, originally from Glasgow and living in Barrow-in-Furness. Since March 2011, she had worked full-time at the park, gaining experience with some of the most dangerous animals on Earth. Her family knew that side of her well. Her mother, Fiona, and her siblings, Stephen and Lucy, often spoke about how methodical Sarah was, how she double-checked her work and followed procedures to the letter. She believed safety mattered, for herself, her colleagues, and the animals. That belief would make what happened next even more devastating. On May 24th, Sarah was carrying out routine cleaning and feeding duties inside the tiger house. The enclosure was designed with multiple layers of protection, indoor and outdoor sections connected by lockable doors, all intended to ensure that keepers and tigers were never in the same space at the same time. Unbeknownst to Sarah, a defective bolt on one of the internal doors, a critical third line of defense after 2 sliding gates, had failed. It left a gap of just 20 to 25 millimeters, barely noticeable, easily overlooked, but enough. Through that gap, Padang, a male Sumatran tiger, managed to force his way into the keeper's corridor. What happened next unfolded in seconds. The tiger entered the corridor where Sarah was working and launched a sudden, violent attack. There was no warning, no time to escape. By the time colleagues realized something was wrong, Sarah had suffered catastrophic injuries. Emergency services rushed her by air ambulance to Royal Preston Hospital, but the damage was too severe. She could not be saved. The shock rippled far beyond the park. Investigators later described the incident as a tragic convergence of human diligence, mechanical failure, and the raw unpredictability of working with apex predators. Safety systems had existed, but they failed when it mattered most. A single faulty door, combined with access to an open corridor, turned a controlled environment into a fatal one. The inquest laid bare uncomfortable truths. It concluded that the tiger accessed the corridor due to a combination of open gates and the defective door mechanism. Crucially, it made clear that Sarah had not been careless. The park admitted to breaching the Health and Safety at Work Act of 1974, acknowledging failures in equipment maintenance and staff protection. South Lakes Safari Zoo was fined $255,000, ordered to pay $150,000 in prosecution costs, and an additional $4,500 relating to a separate big cat safety incident in 2014. In the wake of Sarah's death, the park introduced stricter maintenance schedules, improved safety checks, and revised staff training protocols, changes that came too late for the young woman whose life had already been lost. For Sarah's family, the pain never faded. Her mother, Fiona, spoke openly about the trauma and grief that followed, including years of psychotherapy. It was September 22, 2021, in San Antonio, Texas, a day that began like any other for 56-year-old David Lester Lurie. A skilled pipe fitter with decades of experience, David arrived at the Texas A&M University San Antonio construction site ready to work, thinking he was doing what he had done countless times before. He had a wife, 2 grown sons, and a life built on hard work and dedication. But that day, a deadly combination of negligence, inexperience, and sheer bad luck would change everything. David wasn't trained to operate cranes or handle rigging, but due to a staff shortage, he was asked to step into a role he had no qualifications for. Around 2:47 p.m., his life would be taken in a moment that would leave his family, co-workers, and community reeling. David and his fellow pipe fitters were tasked with moving massive air handling units into the mechanical room on the 3rd floor of the College of Business and Library building. These units, essential for the building's central air system, weighed several tons. The lift was managed by TNT Crane and Rigging, with Byrne Construction Services as the main contractor, and David's employer, Way Mechanical, acting as a subcontractor. The first unit went up without incident, but the second unit would prove fatal. Court records later revealed that the crane operator wasn't qualified. A second superintendent had to be brought in just to monitor him, and the official lift plan was ignored entirely. The operator made up his own plan and shared it with no one. The math in the approved plan was wrong, but no one double-checked it. David and his co-workers, pipe fitters by trade, were thrust into roles as riggers and spotters with no training whatsoever. Adding to the danger, the weather had turned against them. Winds gusted up to 45 millimeters, far above the company's safety threshold of 25-30 mph. The crane's wind gauge was broken, and no one told the workers how strong the gusts were. Still, the lift continued. Witnesses later described the unit swaying violently in the wind. workers warned supervisors, begging them to stop, but the warnings went unheeded. 4 slings were supposed to hold the unit in place, but 2 came loose. The remaining 2 could not bear the weight. At 1:59 p.m., a strong gust of wind tipped the massive unit. David was standing directly beneath it. In an instant, the unit came crashing down, crushing him beneath its weight. He was pinned, suffering life-threatening injuries to his arm and leg. According to his family, he was conscious and in excruciating pain as he was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. David Lurie died on the way, leaving his wife Milena, sons Cody and Zachary, and his mother Mary in unimaginable grief. Another worker, Francisco Montalongo, was severely injured, surviving but scarred by head and body trauma. OSHA investigated but found no safety violations or citations, leaving the burden of accountability to the courts. David's family filed a lawsuit against TNT Crane, Byrne Construction, Way Mechanical, and another company, claiming gross negligence and unsafe work practices. The 3-week trial in Houston revealed a damning picture. An unqualified crane operator ignoring safety plans, untrained workers forced into dangerous roles, and supervisors turning a blind eye despite clear and present risks. The wind was too strong, the rigging was unstable, and no one intervened to stop the disaster. The jury delivered a historic verdict. David's family was awarded $160 million in compensatory damages, followed by $480 million in punitive damages, a total of $600 to $40 million, or one of the largest personal injury settlements in Texas history. TNT Crane bore the brunt of responsibility, while Way Mechanical and the other companies shared the remainder. The family will receive equal shares, a bittersweet reminder of justice in the face of irreparable loss. He was buried on October 7, 2021, in Katy, Texas. He should still be here, sharing laughter and love with those who depended on him. But thanks to negligence, he is gone, and his story stands as a stark, haunting reminder that cutting corners and ignoring safety can have catastrophic consequences.
Owensboro, the Davis County Sheriff's Office saying tonight that one person is dead after an accident involving landscaping equipment.
It was November 28, 2022, in Owensboro, Kentucky. A crisp evening when the streets were glowing with the magic of the annual Owensboro Christmas lights display, a tradition that drew thousands of families every year. Children laughed, couples strolled, and for many, it was the beginning of the holiday season. But for 46-year-old Joseph Joey Wesley Mann, that night would end in a tragedy no one in the community could ever forget. Joey had spent years in the tree trimming business. He was dependable, hardworking, and loved by those who knew him. That evening he was on the job, trimming trees near the very lights that would soon become the backdrop for heartbreak. Around 5 p.m., as he worked his way through the branches, something unexpected happened. A strand of holiday lights, tangled deep in the tree, snagged him. What should have been a minor inconvenience turned into something far more dangerous. As Joey tried to free himself, he lost his balance. In one horrifying instant, he fell directly into the wood chipper waiting below. A machine built to rip through heavy branches, steel, and debris showed no mercy. The injuries were catastrophic. By the time emergency responders arrived, it was already too late. The Davis County Sheriff's Office later confirmed there was no foul play, no negligence, no faulty equipment. It was simply a devastating accident, one that shocked the entire town. How could something so ordinary, so routine, turn so deadly in seconds? News of Joey's death spread quickly, and with it came an outpouring of grief. Friends and family flooded social media with tributes. His longtime friend, Gregory Huntley, wrote one of the most gut-wrenching messages of all. "You left behind a river of tears this morning," he wrote, "and that river will grow into an ocean as more people hear the news. God doesn't make men like you anymore. I'm grateful to have had a friend like you." He recalled how they had planned a fishing trip they never got to take, a dream now forever out of reach. His message ended simply, "I will see you again someday. Until then, fly high and keep an eye on us." The Christmas lights that night stayed on, but they glowed with an eerie sadness. The display, meant to bring joy, had become a backdrop for tragedy. Organizers urged visitors to stay away for the evening, to give space for emergency crews. Families who had come for magic instead went home with heavy hearts. Joey's death was more than a freak accident. It was a chilling reminder of how unforgiving machines like wood chippers can be. Studies show dozens of fatal accidents involving them in the U.S., many of them eerily similar. Workers pulled in, trapped, gone within seconds. Despite all the regulations, despite all the training, when something goes wrong around a machine like that, there is no time to react. For Joey, it all started with a single strand of Christmas lights. Something so small, so harmless, set off a chain of events that ended his life. And now, every holiday season, when the Owensboro lights flicker to life, they carry a weight they never did before. They shine not just with festive joy, but as a quiet tribute to the man who worked beneath them, a man taken too soon, in a way no one could have imagined. On the morning of April 24, 1998, a young man walked through the gates of Shoreham Dock in West Sussex, expecting nothing more than a long day of hard work. He was just 24 years old. His name was Simon Jones, and this was his very first shift as a casual laborer. There was nothing unusual about that morning, nothing to suggest that by the end of it, Simon would be dead, and that his death would expose one of the most chilling examples of workplace negligence in modern Britain. Simon had been studying at the University of Sussex, and was known by friends as someone with strong principles and a sharp mind. But like many young people trying to survive on limited means, he found himself under intense pressure from the job center. He was told to accept work or risk losing his benefits. With a little choice, Simon signed up with an employment agency called Personnel Selection, trusting that they would place him somewhere safe. By law, they were required to do exactly that. Instead, they sent him to Shoreham Dock without checking the conditions, without assessing the risks, and without giving him even the most basic preparation for what awaited him. That morning, Simon was assigned to a Polish cargo ship called the Kambuk. He had no training, no safety briefing, no protective equipment, not even a hard hat. Despite this, he was ordered by Euromine, the shipping company overseeing the operation, to climb down into the dark, echoing hold of the vessel, and help unload heavy bags of stone and loose aggregate. This kind of work normally demands strict safety procedures and the right machinery. None of that was in place. Suspended above Simon was a massive mechanical grab-a-2-ton, clam-shaped steel device designed to scoop loose materials. It was never meant to be used for bagged cargo. Weeks earlier, however, Euromine's general manager, Richard Martel, had made a decision that would prove fatal. To save time and avoid switching equipment, he ordered hooks to be welded inside the jaws of the grab. This shortcut created a terrifyingly dangerous system. Workers now had to stand directly beneath and between the open jaws of the machine, reaching up to attach chains to the cargo, fully exposed to thousands of pounds of moving steel above their heads. At around 10:15 a.m., less than 2 hours into Simon's very first shift, everything went wrong. The crane operator, Jim Harris, sat high above the hold, unable to see what was happening below. He relied entirely on hand signals from a Polish seaman who had little experience acting as a hatchman. Inside the cab, a highly sensitive control lever brushed against the operator's clothing. In a split second, faster than anyone could react, the grab snapped shut. The sound was sudden, final. Simon was killed instantly. The crushing force caused fatal skull fractures, ending his life before those around him even fully understood what had happened. His death was entirely preventable. Investigations later confirmed what many already suspected. Both Euromine and Personnel Selection had failed in their legal duties. Yet justice did not come easily. Initially, the Crown Prosecution Service refused to bring manslaughter charges, claiming there was insufficient evidence. It was only after Simon's family pushed for a judicial review that the decision was overturned, leading to a trial at the Old Bailey. Prosecutors argued that Simon's death was the direct result of gross negligence, a dangerous system knowingly put in place, where speed and convenience were valued over human life. But when the verdict came, it devastated the family all over again. The jury acquitted both Richard Martel and Euromine of manslaughter. The company was found guilty only of health and safety breaches and fined $50,000. A sum many felt was insultingly small compared to the life that had been lost. For Simon's family, grief turned into determination. Out of their anger and heartbreak, the Simon Jones Memorial Campaign was born. Through protests, dock occupations, and national advocacy, they forced the public to confront the dangers faced by casual and temporary workers. Their fight helped change how workplace safety and employment agencies are viewed in the UK. July 13, 2025, was another intense day on a Tamil film set, turned into a nightmare that no one there would ever forget. The cameras were rolling in Nagapattinam, Tamil Nadu, as preparations were underway for a high-octane action sequence in the film Vetivam. At the center of it all was SM Raju, a veteran stunt artist who had spent decades risking his life so audiences could feel thrills from the safety of their seats. That morning, no one imagined the stunt they were about to film would cost him his life. Raju, also known as Mohan Raj, was 52 years old and widely respected across Tamil cinema. He wasn't a newcomer chasing glory. He was a seasoned professional who had worked alongside some of the industry's biggest names. The stunt planned that day was complex and unforgiving. A car toppling maneuver designed to flip a vehicle through the air in a controlled arc. According to those present, Raju had been advised not to perform the stunt himself, but driven by confidence, experience, and perhaps the belief that he could handle it, he insisted on taking the risk personally. Actor K. Vishal, who was on set and later spoke publicly about the incident, confirmed that Raju's decision went against the choreographer's instructions. Even the most routine stunts, he warned, could turn deadly if anything went wrong. But in the world of stunt work, confidence and danger often walk hand in hand, and that day, the margin for error vanished. As the cameras rolled, the car accelerated toward the ramp. For a brief moment, everything appeared to go as planned. Then, the vehicle launched into the air and something went wrong. Instead of a controlled flip, the car twisted violently, spinning out of alignment before slamming front first into the ground with horrifying force. The impact echoed across the set. Crew members froze, then rushed forward as panic set in. Inside the wrecked vehicle, Raju was unresponsive. What made the scene even more disturbing was what rescuers didn't see. There were no obvious external injuries, no heavy bleeding, but the damage was inside. Severe internal injuries had already sealed his fate. He was rushed to Nagapattinam Government Hospital, but it was too late. SM Raju was declared dead on arrival. The post-mortem confirmed what many feared. The sheer force of the impact had caused fatal internal trauma. Even with helmets, reinforced vehicles, and medical personnel on standby, the stunt had proven just how unforgiving physics can be. In stunt work, protection can reduce risk, but it can never erase it. The aftermath sent shockwaves through the Tamil film industry. Grief quickly turned into hard questions. A negligence case was filed against director Pa Ranjith, assistant director Raj Kamal, vehicle owner Prakash, and shoot manager Vinod, as investigators worked to determine accountability. Tributes poured in from actors, stunt professionals, and crew members who had worked with Raju over the years. Many spoke of his bravery, his professionalism, and the quiet courage it took to repeatedly put his life on the line for cinema. It was June 22nd, 2019, in Iloilo City, Philippines. A day that should have been ordinary, routine, and uneventful. For 18-year-old Jar Junko, it was only his second week at the sausage-making factory. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the dangerous machinery. His role was simple: pack the finished products. Nothing more, nothing less. But that morning, something would pull him into a nightmare no one could have imagined. Jar showed up at 7 a.m., eager to start his shift. He worked alongside his co-worker, Carl David Carlos, who was more experienced and responsible for operating the heavy equipment. One of those machines was a massive meat mixer, its sharp blades designed to churn through pounds of meat with brutal efficiency. Jar wasn't trained to touch it. He wasn't authorized to go near it. Yet for reasons no one will ever fully understand, he did. At around 11:30 a.m., Carl briefly stepped away. Just a few minutes. That's all it took. Alone in the factory, Jar approached the machine while it was still running. Maybe he was curious. Maybe he thought he could fix something or retrieve a piece of material. But the moment his right arm reached inside, everything changed. In an instant, the blades caught him and pulled him into the machine. When Carl returned, what he saw would haunt him forever. Jar's legs were sticking out of the mixer. The machine had already stopped, but it was too late. Panicked, Carl tried to shut it down, but there was nothing more he could do. Jar was trapped inside. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but even for them, saving him was impossible. The machine had to be dismantled piece by piece before they could even remove his body. By the time they pulled him out, Jar was gone. He hadn't been torn apart as some feared, but authorities confirmed he had likely suffocated, pinned inside by the relentless force of the mixer. He was only 2 weeks into the job, 2 weeks with no training on that machine, no supervision at that moment, and no second chance. The factory owner later expressed his condolences, describing Jar as hardworking but admitting his curiosity may have cost him his life. Carl, still shaken, told reporters that the mixer's motor had stalled midway. He believed Jar might have tried reaching inside while it was still moving, not realizing the danger until it was too late. "You cannot reach the switch from there," Carl explained. "It's possible he put his hand near the blades." Police ruled out foul play. Surveillance footage and witness accounts confirmed Jar was alone when the tragedy happened. His death was labeled an accident. But was it really that simple? Because questions linger. Why was an inexperienced teenager left alone near such dangerous equipment? Was the safety training truly enough, or just a formality? Could stricter rules, better supervision, or stronger enforcement of safety protocols have saved him? Or was this a case of youthful curiosity meeting an unforgiving machine?
Florida man dies after falling into wood chipper. A horrifying accident occurred when a landscaper was killed after falling into a wood chipper in Davie, Florida on Monday afternoon.
It was a sweltering afternoon in 2014 in Davie, Florida. Hernand Gutierrez, 42, a hardworking landscaper originally from Guatemala, arrived at a quiet neighborhood job site with 2 co-workers. Hernand had spent 14 years in the United States, saving every dollar, dreaming of leaving landscaping behind to start his own roofing business. That Monday seemed like any other, a routine day of clearing brush under the relentless sun. His girlfriend, Karen Gomez Pereira, remembered him as someone always in high spirits, full of plans and hope. They had even talked about marriage. He was building a future, one small step at a time. But that day, fate had other plans. Hernand and his co-workers were operating a large industrial wood chipper, a machine designed to tear branches apart with unforgiving spinning blades. Around 4:15 p.m., something went horribly wrong. No one knows exactly how he ended up inside the machine. Maybe he slipped. Maybe the heat, the exhaustion, the relentless labor made him falter. Whatever the cause, the chipper pulled him in completely. It was over in an instant. A nearby resident, Cheryl Lapel, saw one of Hernan's co-workers run screaming down the street, arms flailing in panic, before collapsing against a fence in shock. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but even the most seasoned officers were shaken. Captain Dale Engel of the Davie Police later said, "I've been in police work 20 years. I've never seen anything like this." By the time the night settled in, officers were still recovering Hernan's remains from the mulch. Counselors were called in to support them. Some officers needed help immediately, unable to shake the horror of what they had witnessed. Karen learned the news from a co-worker, struggling to find the words through tears. "You have to be strong," he said, barely able to speak. But what can anyone say in the face of such a sudden, senseless loss? Hernand had dreams, love, a life he was building step by step, and in a matter of seconds it was gone. His family in Guatemala, whom he hadn't seen in 14 years, would now receive him for a final farewell, a cruel twist of fate he never deserved. The company Hernand worked for offered condolences, but the investigation was ongoing. OSHA stepped in, but for those who knew him, the answers couldn't undo the pain. Machinery like wood chippers has claimed lives before, but Hernand's story struck differently. He wasn't just another statistic. He was a man with a dream, a partner who loved deeply, someone trying to build a future in a place far from home. Witnesses described the scene as something out of a nightmare, impossible to forget. In the weeks and months that followed, the trauma lingered not just for his family, but for co-workers, neighbors, and the responders who were there. Hernand's story became a chilling reminder that even ordinary days can turn into unimaginable tragedy, and that the tools we rely on to work can, in a terrifying instant, take everything away. It was February 17th, 2023, when 24-year-old Sean Clear, a young mechanic from Ballacola, County Lowie, Ireland, lost his life in the most tragic and unexpected way. He had traveled halfway across the world to New Zealand only a few months earlier, in October 2022, filled with excitement to work, save money, and experience life abroad. Just days before his 25th birthday, that dream came to a sudden, devastating end. Sean wasn't just another worker on a farm. Back home, he was the kind of person everyone knew. He grew up in Balakola, a small town where friendliness and community meant everything. He was outgoing, always up for a chat, and loved by his teammates at the KF Balakola GAA club where he played hurling. His father, Tom, was well known too, having served as vice chairman of the Lowes County Board. For a town so close-knit, Sean's death wasn't just heartbreaking, it was unthinkable. That day, Sean was working for Kavanagh Contracting on a farm near Wakapapa Village in New Zealand's North Island. The job seemed straightforward: help recover a mower that had gotten stuck in the mud after Cyclone Gabrielle. A digger was brought in to lift it, and Sean was there steadying the mower. But in an instant, everything went horribly wrong. The digger's boom made contact with an overhead power line carrying 33,000 volts of electricity. The current surged through the machine, and Sean, standing nearby, became the path for that deadly energy. The shock was immediate. It killed him instantly, leaving his co-workers frozen in horror. For his family and friends back in Ireland, the news hit like a thunderbolt. A young man so full of life, with everything ahead of him, was gone in an instant because of a mistake that could have been prevented. Investigators later revealed that Kavanagh Contracting had failed in some of the most basic safety precautions. They hadn't even identified the power lines as a hazard. No risk assessment, no spotter to guide the machinery, nothing to stop what happened that day. Because of this negligence, the company was fined $25,000 and ordered to pay $100,000 in reparations. But money meant nothing compared to the life lost. In the days after, tributes poured in from home. Friends and teammates spoke of Sean's kindness, his hard-working spirit, and the way he always had a word for everyone. "It's just terrible," said Gordon Pearson, chairman of KF Balakola GAA. The entire community came together, surrounding his parents, Tom and Julie, and his sister, Ella, with support. When Sean's body was flown back to Ireland, the grief was palpable. On February 25th, hundreds gathered for his funeral, a final goodbye to a young man who should have had decades ahead of him. But Sean's death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a warning. Just 3 months later, in May 2023, another worker, Holmes O'Connor, was critically injured in a similar accident in New Zealand after coming into contact with a high-voltage line while on scaffolding. He suffered burns, fractures, and life-threatening injuries. Once again, companies were fined. But once again, the question hung in the air: how many times does this have to happen before safety is truly prioritized? WorkSafe New Zealand concluded that Sean's death was not an unavoidable accident. It was preventable. His life could have been saved if basic safety laws had been followed, if someone had been paying attention to the risks right above them. It's a chilling thought. One moment, you're steadying a piece of equipment, and the next, you're gone. Not because of chance, but because of someone else's failure. For those who knew Sean, he will always be remembered as the kind, hard-working young man whose life was stolen far too soon. For the rest of us, his story is a haunting reminder that workplace safety is never something to take lightly, because one overlooked hazard, one unchecked risk, can mean the difference between going home at the end of the day or never coming home at all. On the afternoon of July 28, 2025, what began as a routine day at a construction site in Goodyear, Arizona, turned into a nightmare no one could have anticipated. Ronald Andrew Becker Jr., known to friends and family as Ronnie, arrived at work like any other day, ready to tackle the demands of his job with skill and dedication. But in a matter of moments, the line between ordinary and tragic would be crossed, leaving a family shattered and a community in shock. Ronnie was 44 years old, a devoted father of 3, and a man whose life revolved around his children. Friends and neighbors remembered him as endlessly caring, generous, and dependable, someone who approached life with honesty, humor, and a readiness to help anyone in need. Colleagues respected his work ethic, his skill, and the calm confidence he brought to the often grueling and dangerous world of construction. For Ronnie, family was everything. He attended every game, every recital, every milestone, finding joy in the smallest moments with his children. That Monday, he was working in an open trench near Citrus and Lower Buckeye Roads. The trench, a standard part of the day's tasks, should have been routine, a safe environment for someone as experienced as Ronnie. But then, without warning, the earth beneath him gave way. The trench walls collapsed, burying him beneath tons of soil. Colleagues screamed, scrambled, and dug frantically, but the dirt was unstable. Every layer they removed threatened to bring more down, turning the rescue into a perilous race against time. Emergency crews from the Goodyear Fire Department arrived within minutes. They found Ronnie completely engulfed, trapped under a suffocating mass of earth, with gas, water, and power lines dangerously close, making the rescue even more treacherous. Specialized equipment was brought in, and the team worked tirelessly, but the trench remained unstable. After roughly 30 harrowing minutes, the mission shifted from rescue to recovery, the grim reality settling over everyone present. Nearly 13 hours later, in the early hours of July 29th, Ronnie's body was finally recovered. The sense of loss was immediate and profound. Friends, family, and co-workers were left grappling with disbelief. Vigils were held, with over 80 people gathering to honor a man whose life had been defined by devotion, hard work, and kindness. His children were left without the father who had been their anchor, their laughter, their guidance. Those who knew him spoke of his ability to bring warmth to every interaction, to fix problems with his hands and his humor, and to put the needs of others above his own. The site of the collapse remained a somber place in the days that followed, as investigators from the Industrial Commission of Arizona worked to determine whether safety regulations had been breached. The community rallied around Ronnie's family, raising funds to cover funeral expenses and provide support in a moment of overwhelming grief.